Hello everyone, this video is not sponsored. I bought this set for $70 US shipped on Amazon. It comes with over 2,000 pieces. There's a whole lot of goods to talk about and to show here, and I do think that it's a very good value, a very good value. However, before I get into that, I want to show you just one bad thing. The sails are made of a synthetic cloth or fabric, and they do come bent or folded up in the package to begin with. So they've got these well-defined creases in them as a result, and I just wanted to show you what that would look like. This is actually one piece used for all the sails on a single mast here. I think it'll work out in the end, but I wanted to show you exactly what that looked like right out of the box without any modifications if you just simply built it straight, just without doing anything to it. Now, it's always highly recommended that you iron things like this if you see them having creases, and it's easy to do, or just at least put them like underneath a book for a day, put some weight on it and flatten it out. But I wanted to be sure to let you see what that would look like if you don't do that. I didn't want to hide the defect from you, so I wanted to be sure to cover that right now, get a little bit of footage of it. And with that said, I'll go ahead and take those two off, iron them out, put them back on, and we'll talk about this ship. There we go. That's a lot better, or at least a little bit better. I actually ended up not fully ironing the sails except for the aftmost fore-aft rigged one back there, a little triangle shaped one. I just steamed these. It was a much more straightforward thing and doesn't make it look as perfect, which I really did not want to put this into marketing form. I wanted to keep things a little bit more realistic, and that just made a lot more sense. And steaming it is exactly what I had planned on doing it, as I was talking about as I built this live, both on Twitch and on YouTube. But with respect to the rigging itself, I do want to point out that I did not have to tie any knots here, and they give you plenty of extra string, like almost too much extra string. All this can be cut off, and I'm going to actually cut some of that off now, but again, wanted to be sure to let you see how everything is without any modifications at first, right out of the box. Pretty much everybody has scissors or a knife or something, so you can just trim these off, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. But I did want to point this out as well before doing that. This ship is over 27 inches or 71 centimeters in length, and relative to a random minifigure, kind of standard size, you can see that the ship is quite big. It's not to the scale of figures, and you'll see more of that with the detail as I show you up close on the deck. It does have some minifig compatible things, but it's not really designed to accommodate a whole lot of figures on deck. There are some spots where you'll find studs throughout, and I think that a figure looks just fine on deck. It just doesn't look like as big of a ship. When you do put a figure there, it does not look like as big of a ship as it's intended to be. The brand name here for where I bought this and how I bought this off Amazon was Semky, S-E-M-K-Y. But I could tell that Semky was not an original equipment manufacturer because they have other sets under that name that are very familiar to me that are actually made by other companies. I found this also sold under the Dahonpa brand, and I've bought stuff from Dahonpa before that was made by another company. And then I looked into it further and found that the original manufacturer of this is called Forange. And Forange is one of those companies that makes stuff, and then other brands come along and rebrand it and rebox it. It's just a very common business practice. A lot of people in the West aren't so familiar with, but in China especially, it is super, super, super common. And across many, many hobbies, it's very common. So Forange, or however it's pronounced, F and then the word orange, all one, is the manufacturer. And as far as I've been able to find, as far as I've been able to see, looking it up to the best of my ability, they make their own parts. They actually manufacture their bricks. Now, with this many bricks, over 2,000 for $70 US, I was not expecting the brick quality to be good. I was actually expecting it to be pretty mediocre. I was expecting that if the thing held together, I would be happy with it. If it needed a couple pieces to be glued, I would be okay with it, and I would just, of course, call that out in the review. I did not need any pieces to be glued. Everything actually fit together fine, with the exception of a couple of these yards or these spars here that, especially of the 7 modulus length, that were just a little bit loose. The way that they're designed, the way that the sails are put together, they're not going to come apart right now, but I did want to point out that a couple of these the axles themselves are just a little bit too small in cross section. So yeah, they just didn't feel completely secure in the connectors. Everything else went together pretty nicely. The clutch power with these parts is lower than, for example, with the Rio Bricks larger Black Pearl that I reviewed previously. It feels a little bit lower than with Go Bricks. Definitely lower than with Geostar parts. And it just made for a pretty comfortable build experience. I'm not too picky when it comes to that stuff. I'm perfectly fine putting a little bit of extra 10%, 15% extra effort to put things together. It's much better to have things, as far as I'm concerned, too stiff than too loose. But this was just fine and just comfortable. And I really didn't have any problem with that. Everything seems to have aligned pretty well. There are just a couple spots where I think the design might have missed ever so slightly with the, and I mean slightly, not a plate, not a half a plate, but less than half a plate, with the math, with the brick math. The chain up here for the anchor, which is it's just superficial. It's just on the outside. You do have to put that together. They give you each link individually on a runner or a sprue, just a whole bunch of them. You just have to pop those off and then assemble that together. Not the first time I've come across a manufacturer that requires you to do that. It's a way to cut costs a little bit, and I'm perfectly fine with that personally, again, because it's only $70. These are very flexible. I was happy with that because I hate it when companies make these tubes that are too stiff and then they're really stubborn. You try to bend them the way they're supposed to be and they keep fighting you. These did not fight me, so I'm happy with that. Here's another sticker, by the way, that's not a good one. This goes across multiple pieces and even has some gaps between those pieces. I personally, if I was keeping this for my own collection, I would just cut out the gap parts, just turn that into one for the top, 2, 3, 4, 5 stickers in total. They did it just as one. It was easy enough to put on. But again, I do want to call out anything that's good or bad. Now, one of the big things that I personally really liked when I saw the Leading Brands version of a black pirate ship most recently is that they had the cannons set up in their little ports, all linked to work together. Well, guess what? This one does that too. I am turning a tire on the underside. This has tires that are pretty well hidden. You can see the front ones up there. So when you put this on the ground and you roll it forward, these will go in and out alternately. So when they're out on one side, they're in on the other, and it's supposed to make it look like it's having a broadside. It's shooting, firing off a broadside on either side. When you only look at one side, you only see the cannons being retracted or being brought back. They also have an alternate way to do that without touching the tire. You could actually even leave the tires off and just attach the wheels and you wouldn't even see it from the side. But inside of the cargo hold, there's another little place where you can just access a knob to allow you to change that up. The gold color that they use is injection molded gold. I think the color itself is okay. It's not as metallic as I would like. It's a little bit more of a solid, just plain non-metallic color than I personally like to see for gold. But it's better that they go in that direction rather than putting too much metallic flake in, because when you put too much metallic flake in, that's when you start to experience the dreaded ancient gold plastic syndrome, or GPS, where parts become brittle because there's just too much flake and it's just not able to hold itself together over time. I think this presents itself pretty well from a distance, but when you get up close, there are some details that do look a little bit tacky because we're lacking a little bit of that gold, or ideally would be like a bronze kind of look. They got a large bell back here and plenty of battens all around. As you can see, this is kind of a minifig scaled wheel, not actually connected to anything. There is a rudder. You can turn the rudder back and forth, but it's not connected to this whatsoever. They've got little suggestions of walkways and stairs and such. Some details on the deck as well. If I bring this around, you got the barrel there. I'm glad that they used the brown on top. That's nice rather than just keeping it black. But look at the cannons on top. So the cannons down below, the ones that are attached to the mechanism, those you build up. They don't have the full build of them. It's mostly just the barrel and then some other parts to hold it together. These are just pre-molded parts, and they also come on runners with the little, looks like a pool, a billiards setup, but that's those are supposed to represent the cannonballs in their little receptacles there, and that could really use just a little bit of panel lining, just or a wash or something to make it look better. As it is right now, that's a little bit tacky. You might even want to leave these things right here, these triangular things out. I think the cannons are okay. They're not great, but the cannon ball holders, not so much. And it looks like the last time that I put this hatch here back on, I messed it up a little bit. Yeah, it was a little bit misaligned in there. It's a little bit awkward to get this out. This looks great to me. I really was happy when I put it together. But once everything is together with the cannons in place, as well as the little lifeboats, it's a little bit awkward to get this in and out. But there's the knob right there, the manual knob for adjusting the cannons. And it's a really simple mechanism in there, but they actually have 2 gear trains involved because one of them connects to this here and the other one connects to the wheels on the underside, interestingly. One last detail I wanted to show you from the top is that the captain's quarters actually has interior detail. There are not too many studs. I think it's just a total of 3 studs holding this portion of roof here, but it is a little bit tight in there. You might want to remove one. Oh, I just knocked a flag off the top. Might want to remove either one of these lanterns on the side or the bell tower right here to get a little bit easier access to this, but eventually this will come out. And it's only attached with a few studs. And it's just awkward for me to operate the camera here because we're really in restricted space. But if I can get that to kind of force focus down there we go. And see, there's a map. The map is done with a sticker as well. Got a little flintlock pistol. Just a little bit of detail, which honestly, most people aren't going to see after this is built because it is a little bit awkward to get in there and they do not give you easy access to see that space from the outside. This is somewhat securely attached. You can pull it off, but I don't personally recommend it. Same thing goes for the transom back here. So that's mostly for the builder to enjoy. Now, they do have a different version of this ship from the same company that includes lights, includes way more interior detail, and is fully cut out on one side, only on one side. So one side looks like a regular ship like this. The other side is partially open. So you can see the interior detail, and that one has lights, and it costs the same as this. But I wanted to go with this because it's the closest to a complete ship model, and I wanted to be able to fairly compare it to other ships in that exist on the market. So that includes this stand, which is basic. It comes right at the end and doesn't use up a whole lot of pieces, but I actually like it. I think that it's pretty classy looking. It's rather lightweight, and you can see there's even a little bit of bowing to the longitudinal plates here because it's just one plate for the most part, plus some tiles on the top, but it definitely does its job. This is a sticker right here, just across a couple of tiles. You can leave that off, but you can also just not use the stand at all because it doesn't need it. As I showed you before, you've got some tires on the underside and it does have a flat bottom, which is nice to just have the options to simply put this on the ground. You can put something blue underneath, make it look like it's in the water. And because you do have those tires, I can go ahead and demonstrate now how the cannons come out and then they retract back in, and they're just going back and forth between the 2 sides is what's going on there. So it's kind of a boxer kind of mechanism, side to side, which, you're only going to be looking at it from one side. So it's actually not that bad. When I first put it together, I first tested it before building the whole thing, and I only had just the lower part of the hull. I was like, that seems pretty tacky. But again, in reality, no, you're just going to see those coming in and out, and you can just choose how you want it to be. As for parts, just really quickly, I do want to point out that most of this at the bow is done with a single piece. It's actually 2. There's an inner portion to it as well, an inside part that has the studs, but this is kind of preformed right here, and then the lowermost portions of hull are also preformed parts. Not exactly the part if you're a fan of the leading brand. Sorry, this is having all kinds of trouble getting focused in there, but not a direct copy, a little bit smaller, unless I'm personally not familiar with that particular size. It's not the standard that I'm used to, but otherwise, pretty much everything else is built up with standard parts, with the exceptions of like the shrouds here. And the cannons, which I showed you earlier, got kind of a minifig style setup here, except for the head. The sails obviously are unique, and they do have some parts that are kind of nice in the sense of, like, for example, I can show you right here. Cheese slope pieces. Yeah, cheese slope pieces with studs on the slope. You know, stuff like that. Also parts that allow you to do inverted building in a very small space, like a 1x1 or 1x4 plate that has studs on the top and the bottom, or the tiny little, what I call Kobe studs, the tiny little sleeves that you just insert into an anti-stud to make it a studded surface on the underside. Most embarrassing thing about this from a design and aesthetic perspective is right there. Yeah, I've been holding off on saying that. Blue. Why would they do that? Why would they do that? Why would they follow in the footsteps of the company that makes all the money in the world doing brick stuff, when the company that makes all the money in the world does it wrong by leaving colors that you don't want to see visible on a collector model on the outside of it? Why would you do that? Like, so much of this is so good. They've got so many recolored pieces. They've got black colored axle pin pieces, which, you know, from, again, the leading brand have been discontinued for the longest time. They've got stuff in the right colors. They've got half thickness Technic bushings in black as well. Why are these 3 long pins in blue? That's just so unfortunate. But, you know, you zoom out and yeah, you still see them, right? You still see them. I got my scissors over here that I used to cut the end of the rigging off. Yep. So again, there are some things about this that are imperfect, and I hope that I showed you all the imperfections fairly. It does have stickers as well, but at the end of the day, I am super happy with this. I, again, like it better than the last one, the last big pirate ship that I covered on this channel, even though this one is smaller. I feel like the value here is excellent. I feel like this is better prepared for the average builder. I think that the average builder will have a better experience with it. It has more colors. It feels more tasteful. The sails can have some kind of organic shape to them because they're made with cloth. If I were to do this again, I would go ahead and just iron them right from the start, which is always recommended for this sort of thing. If they are crinkly at all, I would have preferred much nicer cloth, something maybe that's a synthetic blend rather than being pure synthetic like this, something that would not be quite as plasticky. But it is fabric. It really is fabric. So, you know, definitely could be a lot worse, but could have been just a tiny bit better for that. And, you know, the ideal would be some really nice, heavy, fine cloth that just droops on its own, that has a lot of weight to it, a little bit of springiness, so it would just automatically adjust and give you just a beautiful billowing shape. That is possible, but they didn't do it here. But like I said, just a little bit of work with the iron, and you're well within a reasonable range for display. That's, I think, about all I have to say about it. Thank you very much for watching. Sorry this rambled on and went on a little bit longer than expected. I just wanted to cover everything that I reasonably could throughout this, including especially the negative things, because I don't want to have any bias towards any of these products, and especially when something is this cheap, I expect it to be bad, or at least mediocre, at best mediocre, you know? At best okay, but this really feels good to me. I am happy to have this. I felt satisfied putting it together. It felt comfortable putting it together, in spite of the fact that in the second day of the build, I was sleep deprived and food deprived, and my brain wasn't working well, and so I made some mistakes, had to redo those. Not the fault of the kit. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your support. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.